Right, that should be on. All right, this is Jamie here, aka Squirrel, and we got a real treat today. So I'm on with Michael, aka QuikSand, who's with me. Quick, you there?
Jamie, it's a pleasure to join you. This is something I've been looking forward to.
Excellent. Can you see? Is it recording? Can you see it recording somehow on your screen?
Yeah, I see a recording button, and I see a really familiar screen that looks like it should be live for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. All right, good. All right, so fantastic. This is great. Appreciate you coming on doing this. This is going to be a lot of fun. So the plan today is to talk about chemistry and more broadly as well, and the way you think about this game, Quick. But I think a lot of people that play this game seriously and spend a lot of time playing this game know full well that you are the master of chemistry. You originated the way in which you play the game in what I would call a chemistry style. You are the master of it. There are a few people out there that play in the chemistry style. I do to a degree. There's a guy called Grim who does it as well. There are a few others. It's becoming more popular in the league I play in, which is the Red Zone Blitz League. And it's something that I think is topical. And I've always wanted to talk to you about this. So the fact that we're doing this, I'm excited about it. And I really appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, I'm glad to do it. And I'm game for almost any universe of things that we collectively want to talk about. I mean, chemistry seems like the obvious topic that there's some people who are interested and not quite don't really follow how it works. And I'm happy to do nuts and bolts there. But in my mind, that's sort of the momentary personification of a larger strategy of playing this game, and I'm happy to get into bigger picture stuff too, as you will. So steer the ship, and I'll paddle along.
Yeah, big time. And you play. I mean, we're looking here on the screen for those who can see the screen at Quick's IHOF team, which is a thing of beauty, and we come talk about that. You also play. Where do you also play? You play in the GML as well, right? Do you play anywhere else?
I'm in a couple of Ben's league, the Cap Crunch League. So
okay.
His CCFL. That's one that has an artificially reduced salary cap, trying to make it more difficult to keep your team together. I like that challenge. I play the Baltimore Ravens there and in the General Manager League. I recently joined another league that seems to move at an absolutely glacial pace. Took over the Ravens there and gutted the team and turned it into a chemistry freak show, as is my want.
So where's that one? Where's that one?
I'm gonna blank on the name of the league. Honestly, I literally just joined a season ago.
Okay.
It'll take me a second. Sorry.
No worries. What do you think about that? I mean, how did you? I guess one question I was going to ask you, because I mean, you've been playing this game for a long time, right? I've been playing since 2016, which is 4 years, which feels like a long time to me. But you're one of these guys who's been playing for a long time. How long have you been playing for this? How did you get into this?
I feel like this is basically the game that was made for me. So I've been playing. I'm a sports fan forever, and playing fantasy football with American football going back to the 1980s. Always liked computer sim building games, SimCity, and those sorts of things for years and years. And the sports simulation world came on slowly, but I think front office football is really the game that I wanted to play. I played the old FB Pro back in the day, which was a little bit of a button mashing on screen, but you could draft your own players and build your own plays and stuff like that. That disappeared around 2000. I can't remember the year the first front office football game came out, but I was in on the ground floor at the formation of what's now the FOF Central Board. I was not at the very, very beginning, but not too far after, and really active there in sort of building out the way a lot of us thought about the game. Chemistry is not really my only game. I've always been interested in this stuff sort of globally. But I was on the beta test team for several years before that became a gaggle of different people. So I don't know. I go way back.
So how long ago is this? Like 15 years ago, something like that?
Yeah, at least. Jim's third game was the one he did in collaboration with EA Sports, and that was in 2001.
Yeah.
So I would say his first game must have been about 95, 96, and then the second one maybe about 98. And I think the second game came together well enough that a community formed around it. So I probably really plugged in at about 1998,
Yeah.
I would say.
Amazing to think how different it could have been if it had kicked off with EA Sport. Because, you know, I'm British, right? And we've got this
Yeah,
game, Football Manager, which is
sure, I play.
way more mainstream than front office football is. Like, way
Yes.
more.
Oh, yes. Mortifyingly so, I would say.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything fundamentally terrifying about American gridiron football that makes it unapproachable. I mean, maybe it's the nature of American sports fans who don't have the time for this and they want to play Madden and mash buttons. But I'm astounded at what a great seller Football Manager is, and that this genre basically has no competition for front office football.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it should be. I don't really get why that is. There's kind of
Yeah.
a marketing gap there, right? If you could
Yeah.
fill that marketing gap, then, and you know, I'd quite like to see Jim get very rich. So, you know, hopefully one day somebody finds a way to plug it. But anyway, that's wider. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to embarrass you now. So this is something which I think is worth looking at, right? This is, for those who can see the screen, I'll bring it up here. This is as objective a test as you're going to get a performance in people who play football for all that time. And this is the IHOF. I think of IHOF as a benchmark league. The league I play in, I think, is either has emerged or is emerging as a benchmark league as well. But you know, if you want to be sort of thought about as sort of how good are you and compared to all the people who play this game, possibly even in the world, I think this list is as good a list
This
as
is
you're going to
probably
find.
it,
Yeah, and look, what does it tell you? There's two people in the 900 wins club, right? There's you and there's Ben, right? And yeah, that's pretty impressive stuff. It's quite interesting. You look at this percentage thing, right? I think just straight out win percentage is the best way to look at it. And then if you've got a big enough sample size, you can say, all right, that's a big enough sample size. So if you look at it, whoever this guy is, Kazuo, right? This guy must be pretty good at front office. I've never heard of this guy. This must be a guy who's pretty good at front office football, right? To be anywhere near the stuff up here. And then you've obviously got you've got you and Ben with these huge records. Ben is just on an unbelievable planet. I've no idea how he does that. And then
I think that's fair. Yeah.
And then you know, you are pretty much leading the pack of people. We've got a couple interesting sort of you know, you've got this guy Zach, right, who I've gotten to know a little bit, who I think is a kind of new school guy who is just unbelievably good as well. And then you've got a few guys. Unbelievably, I fit on the list. But then you've got. I'm very pleased to see I'm 6 points ahead of Jim, which is pretty satisfying.
Right. A guy who knows a thing or two about the game.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't think he was playing to its fullest extent. I'm gonna say that. And then you've got a few people that are serious. I mean, there's a few names that anyone watching this will recognise. And obviously, maybe you got Eli coming too, I think, as the current IHOF champions. Congratulations to him and a bunch of other guys. Now, one thing that's interesting here, you play in the chemistry style, right? I play in the chemistry style, having copied you. And then you've got Grim here, who is also, if you're 600 or better, right? 600 is 9.5 wins. 9.5 wins is consistent playoff performance, right?
Yeah.
So Malk Powell, who, you know, he's got his. I'd like to speak to him about drafting one day too. Hopefully he watches this. He's at 600, right? Which is basically, if you're at 600, you can expect to be in the playoffs practically every time. Which is good.
Yeah, but Malk Powell gets an asterisk because this is a guy who plays front office football with at least one arm tied behind his back in every season, which is, he shows up for the draft, murders the draft, and picks these brilliant players seemingly out of the clouds, and then basically flakes out for about 2.5 seasons, lets all his players walk, then shows up 3 years later and does the whole thing again. So that he manages a long-term franchise that's north of 500 without doing things like game planning or adjusting for injuries or anything along those lines is testament to the little parts of the game that he has put effort into. He absolutely crushes.
Yeah, for sure. And look, there's a few. One thing I would say, the people on this list, the reason why I'm in this conversation and the reason why I started taking France football very seriously was basically some combination of Ben, the FOFC board, the way you play the game, Malk Powell's thing about drafting that he did, I think, for Front Office Football 7, which got me into it in the kind of really geeky way, and a bunch of other people too. So I super appreciate that. I mean, the thing I took away from this list is really this. Yeah, we're going to have a conversation that's ostensibly about chemistry, but actually, as you said, I think let's have a broader conversation here, because to get to 900 wins in the IHOF is astonishing. And look, when I look at this, I go back to this now. You play this game a bit differently to others. If you look at a roster and Ben's got these amazing websites he does with, you can look at people's rosters nice and quick and easy. And here's Eli's roster right now, or Legion's roster. There's Ben's really roster. Yeah, and these are the two teams with outstanding records right now. They're doing fantastic. Well, you've got Zach's team as well. But the point is, if you look at all these different colors, they're the chemistry groups, right? You then look at yours, right, and it's this astonishing pink vision on offense, right? And then you've got this green defense too, and it's all very, very puzzled together. And you think about this game a little bit differently. And I think the reason why I'm into this style, I think Grim's probably the same, is this puzzle solving style. And I'm just interested into how do you get into this? How did this come about for you?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I've always been a puzzle guy. Actually, there's an embedded joke here that you wouldn't be able to get the reference to as a relative short timer in this community, but my team has a winning record of really, really close to winning 2/3 of its game. Where I'm at .664.
Yeah.
So I'm right at about 2/3. And years ago on the FOFC boards, one of the things I was notorious for was posting puzzles, either things I created or that I stumbled across somewhere. And at one point, I hosted a rendition of a really famous sort of statistical puzzle known as the Monty Hall puzzle, and people could look this up. But anyway, the real answer is 2/3, and this caused a 10-page eruption of people yelling and screaming about it's wrong, it's right, it's wrong, it's right. And for a long time, people just associated me with the number 2/3. So there's a deep irony that my beloved Chitlins hover annually right around the 2/3 win percentage. I'm totally a puzzle guy, and I think I believe in what I think around these parts has come to be known as the Moneyball theory.
Yep.
That the movie and book and so forth about the Oakland A's and sort of winning in baseball by finding underappreciated value like on base percentage as opposed to home runs, right?
Yep.
I'm really interested that this game has enough facets where I can approach this game differently than other people and find value where I think the consensus doesn't.
Yes.
And that's more or less my guiding principle in playing this game at this point. That's partially me just trying to be a survivor. I mean, I have either I lack the skills or the patience to do some of the things that a number of you all have. I watched a video of you and some of your colleagues so doing a breakdown of a red zone blitz draft just within the last couple of weeks. And you all sitting there, pops up on screen, and I hear tapping on spreadsheets, and everybody's saying that this guy looks like he's a 54. I had him rated as number 22. Very analytical, very crisp. Yep. I'm not that guy. I'm a seat of the pants type. The thing that resonated with me in that whole conversation was a few times you said, guys with this profile, they just seem to work. And those were the moments that resonate with me. I've been playing this game for an awfully long time, and I'm that guy. When I see that weird-looking offensive lineman where the bars don't seem quite right, and he only weighs 258 pounds or something, I'm thinking, that dude's an asterisk.
That's the Moneyball guy, right? That's the guy who doesn't look good in jeans or whatever they call it.
Yeah. Did he go to Michigan? Let me check on that, because that's another nice little tell.
Well, do you know, it's kind of interesting that you put it like that. I mean, look, we've there's a few of us, I think, that have gone a bit, on the sort of data-driven direction, trying to figure out as much as anything else what other people have been doing. I do think it's a fairly open. I mean, this league I play in the Red Zone, but it's a pretty open community, right? People tend to explain what they're doing. There aren't that many secrets, as far as I can tell, but you do get people that are playing in a very data-driven style, right? You've got at the extreme end, you've got people who are really good at like databases and stuff. and automation and data stuff, and it's all that's I think there's a place for that, and I find that kind of stuff just sort of intrinsically interesting. But I actually personally, I've got to a point where, having done a bit of that, I kind of learned two things. One thing was, if I do too much more of it, it's going to stop being fun. Not from it's too much computer's point of view, but just from a sort of, let's say I solved more of the game than I currently know, and I started to become dominant in the leagues I play in as a result, I'd actually find that a bit boring. I've kind of learned enough to be competitive, and it's not that I don't want to learn anymore. It'd be perfectly nice if somebody showed me a few things I didn't already know, but I'm kind of happy where I am, and I don't need the need to sort of grind out a load of data to get slightly better, incremental improvements, has kind of faded away, because as I've sort of got more into it, actually the community side of it is at least as interesting as the playing side of it. So as long as my teams are okay, I mean, I want to be in and around the playoff discussion in the leagues I play in, but I'm not sitting here, trying to figure out how to go from 10 and 6 good to 13 and 3 good, using all these sort of data things, because I'm not that fussed about it. So that's sort of one part of it.
And well, you and I aren't having this conversation talking about, we're not playing online games of Connect 4, right? We're not going to be interested in solved games. So to the extent that this version of FOF, in all candor, is really too late in its cycle for its own good health, we're getting, I think, perilously close to the game being solved. I mean, you mentioned Tzak with some admiration, and I would join in that. In this league right now, he's figured out offense, and he's got the personnel to run an all-pass, 8.5 yard per attempt offense that's going to just win 13 or 14 games a season. And he's good enough at accumulating talent. I don't know that he's grade A, but he's grade B or B plus, and that's good enough. But with the game plan he's been able to devise, I mean, I beat him in the playoffs last season, but that was a fluky thing, and I don't own it any better than that.
No, he's an unbelievably good player. I mean, look, he's a smart guy, right? And as you say, the game you don't want it to get too close to being solved, right? At the moment, there are a lot of reasons why people want the new version, all the rest of it. But I find that there's a good certainly in the league I play in right now, there's a real competitive tension, and it's great. It's the way I like it. So look, that's I think what I guess we should do, just to sort of make sure that we've covered it. Most people watching this will be well aware of the kind of how of the chemistry style, but let me just spend a minute talking about that, because this thing we got here, with the all pink here, and as I said, you kind of view the game in this interesting way. As I say, as you say, chemistry is the means, but I guess the end is surplus value accumulation, right? Finding bits of value here, there, and everywhere, wherever you can find it, in whichever little way, and just the nuts and bolts of the actual chemistry itself. So if I just bring this thing on the screen, and hopefully you can see this. This is a thing that Zach did, actually. So for those that don't know, the players in front office football in any league will be bracketed into 12 different or bucketed into 12 different buckets based on their date of birth. So that's what this thing is doing here. You've got begin and end are dates in the calendar, and then depending on which one it is, and it corresponds to star signs, but it's not some sort of weird cosmic thing. It's just something that divides the year into 12. That then puts the players into 12 groups. And then each group has got other groups they like and don't like. So if you take just as an example, here's group 5. 5 is players born between 22nd of May and 21st of June. Those players in group 5 really like players in group 3 and group 10, but they don't like players in group 8. And so the game when you go into the game, it will register what we talk about as an affinity between the players that like each other, or a conflict with the players that don't, and everything else is neutral. So the bulk of players will be neutral, but on your typical roster, you will see half a dozen affinities or something like that across a roster of 53, and you might see 1 or 2 conflicts. If you look at this roster here, where did I put it? Here, you've probably got, I don't know, 30 affinities or something, probably more, I don't know.
Oh, more than that. Goodness. Yeah. I mean, take out my kicker, my specialists and punt returner. But I mean, almost everybody on the team should register an affinity or have
Is your long snapper an affinity on purpose? Is that just to make it look nice?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I actually, I'm not a tinfoil hat guy in most respects, but if there's a seamy underbelly to my thinking about this game, it is, I do feel like part of the way I play this game is a battle of wits between me and Jim Gindin, the developer, personally. So I'm willing to place bets that he never actually removed the affinities for long snappers and merely erased their being labeled in the game. So whenever there's an opportunity, my long snapper will connect with the offensive line or the tight end, wherever his natural position was.
I only say it because I've been meaning to do it for a while. I haven't got around to doing it.
It's pretty pathetic. I mean, honestly. It's an illustration of the depths to which I'm willing to decline here.
So the nuts and bolts, then we've got these groups. So then what we've got on this table, and there are other tables you can find too. This one from Zach is good. There's one if you look in any of the Ben leagues at GML, IHOF and the CapCrunch League, you'll see there's on the left-hand sidebar, there's a thing that does this as well. But you get these colored in groups. So some people talk about the purple group, the yellow group, the green group, the red group. And then, there are different characteristics in the group. This thing from Zach makes it helpful. Some of them have got more intelligence than others, whatever. So that's interesting. So that's one thing. You then, in any given player, if you want them to actually factor in for your chemistry discussion, we all think, I think, that those players need 8 starts in order to factor in, because before a player has 8 starts, it says potential affinity, and after they say 8 starts, it says affinity, with one exception, which is first-year rookie draft picks that were picked in the first 4 rounds. Right. And you've got, I've never bothered to test. I don't really bother doing testing of all this stuff, really. It just seems to work for me, so I just roll with it. But I don't know if potential affinities help you or not. I just don't know. I just work on the basis that when it says affinity, that's better. So I do that.
Yep.
You then need to look. So we're looking at this table to begin with, and then we're looking at players with 8 starts only. Then maybe if I just pick a roster, this one from Eli is a good example here. Elijah. So look, we got 5 groups, right? So the first group is the backfield, so the running backs, and if you had a fullback, it would be the fullbacks. That's number 1. Number 2 is the receivers, so the wide receivers and the tight ends. Number 3 is the O-line. Number 4 is the front 7 on defense, so the defensive ends and tackles and the linebackers. Number 5 is the defensive back. So you have 5 different groups, and each group has got a leader and then the followers. So we'll get to that in a minute. The thing to know on offense is that each of the groups then reference back to the quarterback. So most people, and I know you do this, and again, as evidenced by this, most people that are playing in chemistry frame of mind start with the quarterback, and they say, okay, we've got a quarterback. Let's then try and build the chemistry structure around the quarterback on offense. It doesn't matter on defense. Defense is a different thing altogether. They don't have this. But if you look at what we've got on this Team Orlando here, the quarterback, and I assume it's this guy, Harrison, 79 rated, Pro Bowl.
That's the important guy, right?
Right. So the first thing that's happened is he's looked at which group this guy is in, and he's looked at this number here, his personality score, which is 60, which is pretty good, right? It's a 1 to 99 scale, or 0 to 99 scale, and that's pretty good. So then he's gone back to this list, and he said, okay, which one of these groups is it? 7, 8, 11. Whichever one it is, the leaders need to like the quarterback. So he's gone and found leaders who like the quarterback. So here, let's do the backfield, because I think it's really clear what he's done. So if you look at it, you've got, again, loads of green players. And this one, you know that this is a chemistry thing because he's rated 2. And he's got a really high leadership, and he's alley. I mean, this looks good to me, right? Exactly. I mean,
does my heart good to see players like that making money in the International House of Football. That's great.
I'm feeling it. So for those who are looking at this for the first time, really on chemistry, what the way to look at this is to look at the backfield and you say, okay, who's got the highest leadership? It's this guy, 79. What's his personality? 98. That 98 gets added to the 60 here. Right, so you're now, what is that, 158. Generally, I don't think this is always true, but generally if that number is more than 150, then that's what's called an exceptional affinity. That's going to boost the quarterback's play, first thing. So that's a good start. Then what you can do is go back to this thing and then find people in the relevant other groups that like that leader but are also backfield players, perfect. And then we've got a couple here. So he's got a guy.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So this guy's going to be 93 plus 98. That's more than 150. That's going to be an exceptional affinity. So this guy is, looks like actually a good player, which is always promising. And then this guy, 64 plus 98. I mean, if you look at, I looked at these guys earlier, right? You look at this guy, it's ridiculous how, no wonder Eli's winning the IHOF right now. These are the two exceptional affinity running backs, right? The first one has got most people think recognition is the most important bar.
There
100,
it is, 100,
right? Exceptional affinity, 100. Yards per carry is therefore going to be really high. It's 5. In the most recent season, actually, he's not using the guy. Why is he not using the guy? Because he's now got this guy, right? And then why has he done this? The first guy doesn't catch the ball, right? The next guy is a 0 for outrunning. This guy is really good at catching the ball. And you just know that this is the way he's thinking about it. This is exceptional play, in my view, really outstanding work.
Yep.
Just absolutely first-class play. And then the other thing you do, right, and this is just, anyone that's been in a league with this guy is so good at the undrafted free agent stage. The stage that comes after the draft where you go and take 15 guys and they're all rubbish. This guy takes 40 guys and some of them are good every single, I don't know how he does it, but you look at this guy, right? He's not, Raymond Hester. He's not a chemistry guy, right? He's yellow group. There's no affinity. He's undrafted. He's stayed on the roster. You just know he's good before you click on him, right? Because there's no reason. And you look at it, and here's a couple of telltale signs that he's good. His bars look all right. Yeah, okay.
Plus
but
9.
Look who's tried to hide. Look who's tried to get him.
Yep.
It's Elijah and Ben.
Yep. Right.
So yeah, there's evidence right across the board of really, really top tier elite play. If you're somebody watching this, maybe if you've been playing some single player and you're thinking about getting into the multiplayer league or something like that, it takes a while to get this good at this game, right? This is about as good as it gets.
So stick a pin in this. We don't want to do 20 minutes on this, but if we're talking about untested value in front office football, the post-draft free agency stage is one of the areas that people don't give enough attention to. There's more there than meets the eye. This guy gets it. I routinely, even on teams that I have high caliber players, I routinely find quality chaff that will make my team ahead of my 4th round draft picks. There's more information available post-draft than there is during the draft, and that's underappreciated.
And that I guess, there's a heavy chemistry angle there, but it's not the only angle, right?
For sure.
Actually, one thing that's helpful in reminding me to talk about this, which is this guy, we talked about this leader guy, right, which is rated 2 or whatever he's rated. So this guy's a running back, right? Well, yeah, kind of. He started off as a receiver, right? So he was switched from receiver as a 3rd-year player, which has killed his rating, but nobody cares because so I guess one of the things that you're saying there on the surplus value in that stage in particular, the personality traits, I guess, at that point, whereas you don't during the draft process. You get this thing called mellow, sociable, cheerful, right? But it doesn't give you numbers. And is that are you looking mainly there on offensive guys because you can position switch them and you can get them starts more than a defensive guy?
It's a mixed bag. It depends on where my team is in a performance cycle. I'm willing to throw a defensive back or a linebacker into a starting lineup for a season, try and squeeze 8 starts out of him and make a guy that I'll use forever. I'm more willing to do that with a young guy who's got 1 skill and a 95 personality. We're mixing the advanced ideas with the basic ideas, but if I see him as a long-term chemistry asset, I'll suffer the consequences of throw him out there for 8 or 10 starts, get him to click in, and then maybe he'll be my leader one day, or at least he'll contribute from the bench.
Yes. And so to do that, you're thinking 2 or 3 seasons ahead, right?
Typically.
All the time.
I probably don't want to do that on a team that's already peaking, and that would come at a real cost.
I was going to say, what if you think you've got a 9 and 7, 10 and 6 kind of roster, and does that guy not get the chance that year, or what?
I don't know. I'm a sense of smell sort of guy, so I don't have a hot versus crazy grid where I can plot this out perfectly. Look at my options, but I really don't mind using. I typically use a 3-4 defense. I think of the weak inside linebacker as a giveaway spot.
Okay.
And I've heard you say words like this: "You want to run against my team? Have
Yeah.
at it." And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't,
All day long. Yeah.
So in my base defense, I don't really mind having a hobo in there for a handful of games. Sometimes that's fine.
Oh, for sure. Look, I'm looking to it. I encourage running against my team. I think it's great. The more people want to do it, the better. Absolutely 100% on board for that. All right. So how do you search for, I mean, we've just talked about kind of what you're doing in chemistry and kind of how people do it and how we do it, at least how I'm doing it. How do you search actually like physically in the game for who's a set? Do you use the game to figure out who a chemistry fits? Do you use sort of some sort of piece of gizmo or whatever, like a spreadsheet or something? How are you doing it?
Yeah, I'm not a gizmo guy. One thing that is a delight is on the page where you have up right now, off to the left, all of Ben's leagues have a chemistry search.
Yep. So this thing here,
and
I'm just going to bring it up.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Right. So this is a tool that I basically help guide Ben. This is what people like me would want.
Yep.
And it basically lets you sort and sift in whatever way you want. So I see a former player of mine listed second there. Roberto Middleton was a former defensive back leader for me.
Okay.
But I do a lot of searches based on just let me look at the 2 affinity groups that I want. Let me search by personality. Let me see what's out there in the free agent market. And, this guy's going to cost me twice minimum salary, but he's worth something. No, this guy would take over my leadership. I don't want that.
Yep.
This stuff has become second nature for me just because I've built probably 15 teams I care about this way.
Yep.
So it's a hurdle. If you're used to playing FOF in a more conventional way as just a collector of big red bars, then the idea of getting past talent and looking for these offbeat things will be unconventional and uncomfortable and maybe more than you want to do. And I get that, but please stay out of my lane then, because I want guys like this fella on my team. I just cut him earlier this season because I wanted to shift the leadership in my defensive back group. But this guy's playable, not a superstar, but a lovely leader. 82 leadership means he's likely to stay as a leader. 95 personality means once he clicks, he's going to click really well. Love guys like this.
Oh, for sure. I mean, look, if you can get the chemistry guys to be anything like league average, right? And they're giving a big boost to what I think of as like the tent poles. There's going to be people on your roster. I mean, one thing I do that's different to you, and I kind of find this interesting to get or taking it. I tend to say like, okay, some players are really important, and I'm just going to get the best ones of those. Like I'd say like my wide receivers or whatever. I'm just going to get the best ones I can. In some leagues, they're scarce. I mean, in the Red Zone Blitz League I play, and it's unbelievably scarce right now. There's a real high valuation in wide receivers, right? So you just take what you can get. And so that's a slightly different style to you. And probably more akin with what Allegion's doing here, which is, there's a bunch of chemistry going on, but there's also the best tight end that you can find, the best wide receivers you can find.
Right.
And so how comes you're not doing that? What makes you think about which players to get? Like, how do you think about it?
Yeah. I think it's more art than science. I have varied between absolute purity with chemistry and a more modified approach, which I think is probably closer to optimal for my way of playing. So Eli is probably closer to a sweet spot of having a chemistry driven but not completely overcome team here. I don't know what he's doing on the offensive line. Maybe these players are really high quality. I can't tell from here if he's a yellow group guy. I don't know who all these other fellows are. He's got a lot of 40s.
He's got another one of these 1-rated leaders. He's got 94 leadership. He's traded for this one. So I mean, he's age 35. Right. So if you want to compete against Eli, go and hire all the guys that look like this leader and make sure that Eli can't get one. There you go. Here's a tip for everyone else. But look, I mean, this is I guess a modified version. This is the hardcore chemistry versus the mainstream is somewhere in the middle of the two. It's trying to, I guess this approach is trying to get the juice, right? Get the 80-20, get the whatever these and come back to what you were saying about Jim sitting in a room somewhere developing this computer game we all play, right? Ultimately, it's one guy building this thing that we all, this amazing masterpiece
Right.
logic sequence that none of us have really managed to solve. And yeah, I just think I've always thought in various bits of this game, there are what I think of as like multiply by 0 points. And sort of, you don't want to be the guy who's got the rubbish player somewhere where you just know that in some formula somewhere that means there's a multiply by 0 and you've really harmed your chances, right? And I just think, I just wonder if on the flip side of that, on the chemistry thing, some people say, do we think there's a diminish? I've seen people ask you before, do you think there's a diminishing marginal return to chemistry? Like, it's great if you've got 5 affinities, but what if, does it really matter if you then get 25? And I just wonder if it's almost like the opposite, like exponential. The more you get, the better it is. I just wonder if that's possible.
I'll stick with Occam here and say, don't we think that a guy in his basement in New Hampshire or in Ann Arbor or whatever is most likely to just make this a linear thing? I mean, when I've created, backhand arithmetic to come up with how strong is my chemistry, I'll count an exceptional as a 5 and a phantom as a 1 and a random affinity as a 3 and figure it's more or less linear and it more or less adds up. He's interested in weird ass, calculations and formulas that we can't uncrack, and that's fine, but I don't see any reason to overthink that. So we're never going to know whether my 10-fold chemistry effect is actually 10 times better, 30 times better, or 3 times better. I'm persuaded it's better. I've seen a great deal of results over a long time that convince me that it is.
Yeah.
So I'm just looking to harvest value that way. And back to your theory that the multiply by 0 theory, I like that a lot. So a corollary to that would probably be that, okay, avoid the zeros and accumulate the hundreds, but let's not obsess all that much. I'll take a guy rated 33 who's been on my team for 9 years and is a cohesion monster over the guy on your team who's rated 54 at the same position. Your right guard, who's your second-year guy, who was a second-round draft pick. You got a lovely 50 rated right guard. My guy's rated 32. He cost me 1.5 times minimum salary. He's an enormous asset to my team because he's got a 90 personality with my 98 leader. He's been on my team for 9 seasons. My whole line plays better when he's out there. No, you can't get that unless unless you basically build the whole framework around that guy adding value to your team.
So can I ask you this? Because this is when I was really I did go through a period which I'm almost borderline ashamed to admit, where I basically really tried to figure out what the hell you were doing. And one of the things that I kind of tentatively concluded, I think chemistry, okay, there's probably a multiplier, make sure other players, but of course, right? But ultimately, I've got a sort of sneaking suspicion that you can't really think of chemistry without cohesion, and you can't think of cohesion and chemistry together without thinking about the cap management side of the game. And basically, the way where I get to, I think, is that cohesion is really expensive, right? All the players that play a lot of snaps, they want loads and loads of money when they come up for their contract renegotiations. Therefore, it's too much. It costs too much. Whoever you get, it costs too much to keep the players for long period of time. You're capable of keeping these, players for long periods of time and getting the benefits of it. And I think the reason for that is because chemistry means you can have basically worse players, and that means you can pay them, and that means you can keep them, and that means you can benefit from cohesion. So it kind of like as if, the way I think about it is the way that what chemistry is doing is it allows you to really get continuously afford cohesion. Does that make sense to you?
Oh, it completely does. In much the same way that there's a secondary benefit for like what's going on now, all these rocket scientists out there who have come up with let's pass every play, and that way I can save a ton of money on my offensive line because I don't need anyone who can block the run.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Like the real
or any running backs.
So exactly. I don't need to pay a running back. Fine. I'll even hustle my receivers back in there. We don't need to get into that, but if benefit number one is we think statistically passing is better than running, which we do. then that's outcome one. But outcome 1A is it makes it easier to build the team because you can overlook other things that otherwise would have been resource drains.
Yeah.
So pass blockers only are cheaper. Great. Keeps your offensive line cheap. That's you can spend more money on these Titan wide receivers. I'm doing the same thing. The main reason for me to invest in chemistry is it makes the players play better. But along the way, I get enough value out of that low-rated player who gives me chemistry and cohesion, and the game doesn't tell him he's worth a lot to my team. So he only asks for, if I play my cards right and I don't get him on the field the year before his contract demands, he will ask for minimum salary. And believe me, I play my cards right.
I'm loving this. This conversation is going very well for me.
I'm glad I can deliver. So.
Exactly. Let me ask you this then. So when you draft, right, are you, because you draft for affinity only, right? I think that's right, isn't it?
In just about all my leagues, I am affinity only at this point, with the very narrow exceptions.
So, and does that logic extend to basically saying, all right, if I can, I'll trade these picks for players? Because I mean, for me, I did this in this league I play in, Red Zone Blitz. I was in I started with a team that was pretty good actually. It was a sort of 8-8 kind of roster. There was plenty of good assets in the roster. But I looked at it and I thought, well, really what I want to be doing is try and use as many assets as possible to try and get affinity players. And that meant trading picks for players. Are you doing a lot of that kind of thing? Or are you just saying, I'm going to just pick what I can and try and get young players, cohesion? Because it can work both ways, right?
Yeah, I think I'm struggling here to find the right balance, because engaging in the draft is one of the things that makes this game entertaining.
For sure.
And I mean, nominally, this is a hobby. So I'm not, we're not doing this trying to beat the bond market and make money for clients. We're trying to do this because because it's fun to do. It's engaging to build and that sort of stuff. So yeah, I want to build a winner, but I also I want to spend time on things that I enjoy. And like just skipping the draft, if I were to trade out all of my picks and just try and get quality veteran players who are perfect fits, maybe that's an optimizing for wins, but I don't know if it's optimizing for enjoyment.
Yeah.
So
I see that. Have you thought about, there's a middle one there, which I've thought about, which is basically try and draft the best young talent you can and then trade it for players. Have you ever thought try to do that?
Yeah. My most recent engagement, which I liked a lot, even though it didn't work the way I wanted, was in the general manager league. This is a really fast moving league. The whole regular season is simmed in one shot, in one day. The postseason is in one day. It's a 0 injury league, so you can do an entire season in 2 weeks real time.
Yeah, I love that league.
Really good for sandboxing, right? If you want to fiddle with something and see it out over 6 seasons, you're done, in 3 months real time. That's a lot easier than a conventional multiplayer league where that might take you a year and a half or whatever. Anyway, in that league, I went about and said, all right, I'm going to try and build a team that peaks in every way all at the same time.
Yeah.
And so I didn't tank, but I kind of threw away a couple of seasons. I forced guys in to get starts only because I wanted them to be chemistry assets in the big year 21-12.
Got it. Yeah.
And so like I was working backwards for like 4 or 5 seasons, sort of like one of these Soviet 5-year plans where the whole objective was to have the team peaking. And if I had a 10th year player and I was 3 years away from that year, well, get rid of him. He's not going to be an asset in the year I'm trying to win. And some things went sideways in that, and it's an experiment in human behavior as well as playing the game. But I like the mentality that I struck on there. And what I started doing there was, let me trade away my lower draft picks.
Yep.
The likelihood of me getting them on the field and being useful is so low. I'll trade my 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round pick for a future 3rd or a future 2nd or whatever.
Yeah. And that's, because again, if you're trying to get 8 starts, I mean, you can do the fiddly stuff, but there is an argument for doing that, of course. And that, for those who haven't seen it, I mean, I've just brought up on the screen here this thread that you've been running at FOFC for quite some time now, where you're basically documenting how you think about that GML team. And
Yeah.
I mean, anybody who wants to play this game in an advanced level basically needs to go and read this thing immediately. If you haven't, then I just strongly recommend it. And it's super. Those of us who do follow this game quite closely, I think there's a pretty clear hardcore of us who are reading this on a regular basis. And I appreciate that you do this because it's kind of fun. This sort of vicarious GML enjoyment for me. I don't play in that league anymore. It got a little bit quick for me.
Right.
I wasn't able to keep up, so I had to move to a different league. But I played in that league for quite a while, as you know, and just think it's a fantastic league. And for people that may be thinking about becoming a beginner player in multiplayer front office football, I would say that it would be a good league to start in. I think that would be a really good place to start thinking about the game in a multiplayer context. Just one, I guess. Do you ever break the chemistry ever? Have you, like, in your in this team? I mean, your kicker, that doesn't really count. Like.
Yeah.
I mean, there must be players that you've broken chemistry for. Like, do you ever break it for? There must be some guys that you've done over the years where you've done that.
Sure, and like over the course of my various teams, I'll have exceptions here or there. Yeah.
What about this? This must be killing you, right? You've got a really good quarterback with a zero personality. I mean,
right.
like that, you must hate that, right? I mean,
I hate it. But I painted myself into a corner with this guy. I made a trade up to get him, and I have a long history of being completely incompetent at drafting quarterbacks, which I know I know doesn't exactly put me on an island by myself. But
I'm in that club. I've got all these spreadsheets and stuff. I have no idea what you're supposed to be doing when you draft a quarterback. No idea at all.
Right. So, you know, by what I saw with this guy, my team was desperately in need of a quarterback. He was in the right chemistry slot to be a fit with all of my leaders at the time. This Chesapeake team has been in the best chemistry trio. The 9-10, 12-1, 1-2 group is the best group. I've built the whole offense on that group since the beginning of time, basically.
Yeah.
So this guy shows up in a draft, and he wasn't an obvious superstar. So I dealt up to pick 1.6, but it was like 3 first-round picks to come up and get him. And then I get my first look at him, and he's a personality 0, and I threw up in my mouth a little bit. But, you know, what are you going to do at that point? Like, I'm completely invested in this guy. Now he's an 11th-year guy. I guess I don't think he's won me a ring, but now I'm a perennial playoff team, and he's you know, in the top 4 or 5 statistical quarterbacks, even without being really all that great. But he's tough to sack. That's good. Sense rush is a dominant rating. So
I mean, what about have you ever had? I don't know if it's because I mean I know you've got Grim plays in this league, right, in a chemistry style. Have you got somebody who's you get in that situation sometimes where somebody's basically playing with a chemistry team in the same group as you? Have you got that right now?
Yeah, I've got. Well, I mean, it's actually just landed in my lap in the general manager league, and just today I was typing about it in my little dynasty thread, which I appreciate your comments about. Another pretty good owner, Johnny Shaka. Changed. He was part of a weird movement. Apparently, a bunch of owners in the GM league, since it's so easy to build your own team, they all decided, let's get into a division together and like compete head to head. Okay. So he moved to a new team, and he's decided to rebuild his team. He's at least a semi-committed chemistry guy. Okay. And at least a couple of his groups, he's competing head to head against my GML team. It's just. It's honestly, it's a lose-lose. It's like playing a game of Risk and having a border war across Asia. It's just the worst case scenario for both of us that we're going to be poaching each other's players. I can't let my chemistry stiff walk into free agency and sign him for Minsal. So it's just I'm trying to coax him in another direction, but I don't think that's
so when I joined, I played in IHOL for a little while, right? And you may remember I was Iowa, right, for, I don't know, 10 seasons or something. And I came in and I was like, okay, well, you know, I'm not going to try and use the same groups as you for this because, well, for multiple reasons, but as much as anything else, out of respect, it would have been ridiculous for me to turn up and just start copying your style with your players. But then I looked at what you were doing. I looked at what Grim was doing. It's like, okay, so there's kind of not that many. You got to thread the needle here. There's not that many. I did manage to find a kind of, I was like an off-brand chemistry team, you know, like I was sort of like in on the margins. But you know, one of the things that's going to happen and it's happening right now in Red Zone Blitz, which, by the way, I think it's kind of annoying on one level, but it's also great, which is that people are seeing the impact that it can have, and they want some of the action, and you do get competitive tension for chemistry assets. Now, the whole point of chemistry assets is it's a surplus value thing. You're away from the mainstream. You're doing something not many people are doing. You're signing guys for Minsal that are making, as you say, you've got your 30 rated guy who starts performing at league average because you've got this Minsal guy sat next to him with exceptional affinity, and you've kind of done this money ball, surplus angle, surplus value. Nobody's doing it. But at what point does the competitive tension basically take away the arbitrage that's there, right? You've got an arbitrage that's there in the game. It's probably the most obvious one that you can go and exploit. There are other sort of angle shooting, puzzler things out there, but maybe this is the most valuable one. I mean, there's Cohesion we've talked about. I guess special teams is another one. Is a sort of obvious one. The one that there's a couple that I think the game. I do wonder. I kind of speculate whether Jim has made rookie quarterbacks better in this iteration of the game, because I think one thing, if I was him, again, sat in his basement like you were saying, what's the NFL the prevalent surplus value narrative in the NFL arguably has been get a rookie quarterback and then surround him with assets for good enough for Jared Goff, right? 4 years, good enough, and then just push. And then if it doesn't work, whatever, let it all break for 2 years, go back up the board, do it again, and just keep doing it until they change the rules of the NFL. And now they haven't changed it, right? And as I understand it, I'm really, really close to look at it, but the negotiation with the union is going to be the same rules for the next 5 years. I'm expecting to see teams in the NFL doing that all day long, right? And we don't really have that.
The twist is don't extend Jared Goff with a monster contract when he's merely a replacement level quarterback asset. And that's what the Rams did wrong, and they've ruined their franchise for a cycle over it.
Right.
We don't totally see that yet, but the real Moneyball play is chew your guy up for 4 or 5 years and then let him go.
Right. So, or trade him, or see if there's a comp pick. We obviously don't have comp picks in front office football. I guess the closest thing we have to that cycle is some teams, and I'm an example of this, go through this thing where basically you just do these huge trades up the board every third or fourth year to get another quarterback or another wide receiver, right? And that's the kind of closest thing we have. You're just throwing massive amounts of assets at those irregular trades up the board to get these prime assets, and then you're doing whatever you can come up with, chemistry is part of it, to make the back 45 guys in your roster league average, right? And as cheaply as possible. And that's kind of one way. I guess the other one, I wonder if this ever appeals to you. Do you ever kind of, the track I don't see anybody looking at really is the kind of the veteran trade. Very few people, I know people value Cohesion greatly, but you just don't see many people being, I just had to trade my quarterback. I traded for a quarterback in Red Zone Blitz, right? I traded away my age 34 quarterback, and he's good, and I've won a bowl with him, and all I could get was a 3rd round pick.
Right.
3rd and a 5th.
Yeah, I actually think there's an angle there, and early on in our conversation, we talked about Benny Lou or Skydog, or how we know him, as a guy who may have the most complete resume and skill set in this game on the planet.
Yeah.
One thing Ben is absolutely willing to do on a team he cares about is he will go out and sign a free agent who's in year 12 to a 2-year deal for fat money, which that guy's asking for. And he will be perfectly happy to do that when most of us are really focused on the year 5 guy and the year 8 guy because we want to get him for 6 or 8 seasons. He figures the value is in the underappreciated quality, fully developed player for just a couple of years. Let me get that pass rusher for 2 years before he falls apart.
Yeah, and to be able to, one thing that I've noticed, I'm sure you must have noticed this over the years. If I, on the few occasions, a few times I've sat there and I've really ground out some data to try and figure out a problem in front of football, whatever it is, and the sort of problem, I haven't done this, but it would be, okay, how long do these guys last before they retire? So if you've got an age 33 guy, what's the probability he's going to retire or break down in the next 2 years? And you just know that Ben's figured that out arithmetically, right? He's got some sort of numerical view on that.
No doubt.
And that view, if you had it and other people don't possess it, that's a surplus value thing. And the number of times when I have gone to the trouble of figuring some specific point out putting it into numbers and then ground away at the numbers, try and figure out what I think it thinks. And you come up with this like small incremental improvement in the way you play the game. And of course, you look at what Ben's doing. Yeah, Ben does that. Just every single one.
That's right. Yep.
It's just this accumulation.
He's got a tab for that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. But hey, so okay. So look, I think that was a sort of the how of it. I guess let me ask you the question that's topical in Red Zone Blitz right now. How strong do you think these chemistry effects we've talked about? What do you think's the impact? Is it a win, a couple of wins a year? How would you kind of feel? Yeah, well, if you were trying to put it into a number or kind of a magnitude or amplitude, what would you think it is?
I think that's really tough to measure. I mean, it's virtually impossible to measure. I joined the Red Zone Blitz forum because I thought there were some interesting discussions going on there, and I dropped a little bit of conversation there. I've changed my stripes. I used to be a data guy, and it bores me now. So I'm not interested in that right now. For whatever reason, this chemistry thing doesn't bore me. So that's my quirk or kink or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
So I'm persuaded from having looked into it seriously a long time ago and just sense of smell. I think it turns an 8-8 team into a 9.5 win team. If you're serious about chemistry, I think it's a win or two. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but I don't know, if you go out and sign, a pass rusher for 10% of your league salary cap, and you were told you're going to get a win and a half out of that guy, you'd probably be thrilled to get that, right? I mean, wins above replacement in football, this is a small number compared to baseball where we see that metric a lot.
Yeah.
I think magicking a win or two a season out of basically the fabric of the game and having some maybe side benefits as well makes it a viable way to stay competitive. To be honest, I'm not on the tier where even you guys on your video, just breaking down the RZB draft and so forth.
Yep.
You guys are ahead of me on knowing this whole intuitive combination of, this guy's got the low endurance, that's a problem, or you're talking about age.
Some of these guys, I mean, if you listen, I mean, obviously we've got a bunch of guys that have got it, but I mean, you listen to the way, I mean, you talk about the way that Nick plays. So Nick's been playing the same kind of amount of time as you have, and there's so much of it's intuition, right? And it's just pattern recognition over loads and loads and loads of repetitions, right?
I think there's a lot to be said for that. So that's fine. For me, this makes a lot of sense. And I mean, I don't field crap teams anywhere. So I play this style in all my leagues now, and give me 2 seasons and my team's going to win 10 games.
Yeah.
Basically everywhere, all the time.
Yeah.
Now, it's not that I'm a savant with one skill that all I can do is chemistry. I'm good at assessing veteran talent, and I'm good at understanding this defensive back should play in the nickel spot, not in the cornerback 2 slot. I mean, I have a game plan, and I use the same game plan for all my teams. I don't mind confessing that I'm not interested in that anymore.
Yep.
So, but like I know what I need from my teams. I can go find it. I know how much to pay. I'm pretty good at reading the market, and I'm the guy who's going to bid 18 million when everybody else bids 15. So I'll build my team. I'll build it around chemistry, and I'll be in the mix. I'm probably not going to be 15-1, but I'll be 11-5.
Yeah, and consistently, right? And that consistency is, I mean, it's interesting because I think that kind of brings our conversation to its sort of natural conclusion, which is, ostensibly this was a conversation about chemistry. And I hope people that have listened to this and, that's something that they can, talk about the sort of how chemistry is done. But actually, I think chemistry is kind of ostensibly what we've been talking about, but actually it's been a lot more about, it's a surplus value mentality. It's a kind of puzzler, angle shooter mentality. It's long-term thinking about the game. And if you do all those things, you end up doing chemistry because it's one of the means that sort of gets to those ends. But it's not actually, I mean, it could easily be some other method. It's not completely inconceivable. And that was why when you took a second team in GML. For a second, I was like, I wonder if what's he come up with here? He's got some other thing. What's it going to be?
You know,
I'd be super intrigued. We talk about what's the impact? Is it a win? Is it 2 wins? I think it probably is. That probably is a win or two, right? And if you start at 500 and you get 2 wins and you go from 8 and 8 to 10 and 6, and you're a playoff perennial, right? So
right.
that's why it's so valuable. But I just wonder if you and I guess Grim as well, who plays in this style, played outside the style, what would it do? Would you still be a 10 and 6 team, 11 and 5 team consistently? My guess is you'd be pretty damn close, but you might have a few more 9 and 7, 8 and 8 years in there. That would be my guess. What do you reckon?
It's possible, I guess. I mean, the upside would be I'd be able to look at a full draft.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
Yeah,
I'd be able to look at the whole universe of free agency rather than, I mean, I'm used to looking at blinders. I ignore 5/6 of the universe in all the player acquisition modes.
Yeah.
So
how do you do that when you're drafting? How do you know which ones? Does it even I don't use the game engine much for drafting. Does it tell you much about like who I guess it gives you sociable, cheerful, whatever.
There's all you get are those 3 bands. It's terrible.
Yeah.
And even actually, this is a cruelty inflicted upon me personally by Mr. Jim Gindin, and I'm saying this facetiously. He and I are cordial and go way, way back, but he made some serious changes to the chemistry system between Game 7 and Game 8.
Yeah.
And it was designed to frustrate people like me who were creating these Death Star chemistry hives.
Yeah. I do wonder if he kind of turned down the effects a little bit in that transition.
I'm going to go, again, Occam's razor tells me he did the minimum. And what I believe he did was he just tried to make it harder to assemble such a team and didn't bother making any changes to its effect.
Yeah, build the barriers up, right?
Yeah, exactly. So just barriers to entry, but not actually changing the fundamental effects. I had been doing stuff like position switching a quarterback to become a linebacker because he would make a good affinity leader. And before starts were a thing, that was a free reign in front office football for multiple versions. So give me a 230-pound quarterback. I'd fatten him up if I needed to. Then I'd switch him to play outside linebacker, stick him on the bench, and he's the talk of the town back there. Everybody loves him. He's never going to play linebacker for me, but we pull him out of the box once in a while.
Yeah. Look, I just wonder if that raising of the barriers, I don't know, like it kind of made it for a while. It kind of created this period ago, surplus value, Moneyball, where nobody really wanted to go through the hassle. But I think it's going to get certainly again in Red Zone Blitz, where I play, is getting ever more popular. And I think that those chemistry effects are going to dilute. So I'm afraid I'm going to have to think of some other stuff to do to try and to get a little bit of if I can find some surplus value somewhere.
So you want to speculate on that for a second?
Yeah, go for it.
So if there's diehards who have actually listened to this whole conversation,
there will be.
There'll be some. I mean, there's not going to be a cast of thousands, but there might be a dozen of us who care like this. All right, here's an unexplored territory that the people who have broken down the game and did like the harvest all the data into spreadsheets and so forth. A lot of people I think probably know this, that the raw data for player ratings, when we see things graded from 0 to 100, right? The raw data is not stored on a scale of 0 to 100. I think I'm going to get this wrong, but it's something like it's a 0 to 1,000, and a raw value, I think it's 350 is an FOF apparent value of 0, and then 650 is an FOF apparent value of 100.
Yeah,
so
like that, right? Yeah,
it's something like that, right? Okay, so let's break out of the mentality that what we're doing is playing football, and put on our glasses that remind us that this is a computer game designed by a developer. Why would you store this data in some way other than 0 to 100? In my judgment, the easiest answer to that question is you do it for purposes of having guys who go outside those ratings. Yeah. So if there's unexplored surplus value, it might be in guys with 100 ratings. That
Yeah, yeah,
maybe
yeah.
that guy who has the 100 hole recognition
Yep.
actually is 134.
Yeah, I see you.
And
And
like
you
we've,
just can't see it.
like there are games that do that. I think the out of the park baseball does that. You can scale things on a 1 to 100, but then suddenly there's a guy with 120 to say, well, that's Ricky Henderson. He steals bases better than 100, right?
Yep, yep.
So FOF might very well work that way, and Jim has just never told anybody that happens. There were a couple tiny little nuggets back in the good old days when he played in this league, the IHOF.
Yep.
So maybe there's something there, and we haven't studied it. So if you got guys who have a 100 rating, or if they're out in free agency, maybe mentally pursue those guys with a little extra cash or a little extra vigor, because there might be a 130 rated guy out there for you.
Yeah. I see.
And maybe your zero guys are actually minus 70.
Right. And so,
we know the void is a thing in FOF where an ordinary, like my guy on the screen right now has a void in timing, which I actually is a common 0. But there are a lot of pretty routine players that just seemingly have a bad dice roll and a firm 0, not a 7, but a 0. It's a clear void. Maybe those guys are actually like minus 50 in that thing, and they're dreadful.
Yeah.
And maybe we're underappreciating the weight that they have attached to them.
I do agree that I see no reason to doubt that that's true. And the main reason I think I agree with that is because when you see a lot of players when they get revealed after the second preseason game in their rookie year, and you thought they had a 0 bar in the draft, but they come out and they've got like 1/3.
Right.
And it's quite commonplace, and you just think, what the hell is that trying to tell you? Right? It must be. It's there for a reason. Why is it there? That just looks so weird. And a lot of those players turn out pretty well. And as it comes back to, there's part of me that wants to go and really get a load of data and try and solve some of these problems, and there's a part of me that doesn't. Right? And I'm kind of in the middle. This kind of conversation, we speculate over what it is. For me, that's where the fun is. And I'm but there is a fraction of me that's like, well, why don't I just, go and spend a few hours just getting a load of data and then just grinding it and finding out, well, what's the actual answer? And I don't know, like it's kind of there comes a point where it kind of goes too far. But as you say, if it turns out that the chemistry arbitrage in a league I play in Red Zone Blitz is
right.
ameliorated array by competition, then we have to go and find something else to do, right?
Right. Well, I mean, and like we're going through the mature or maybe past mature cycles of a really good game.
Oh, for sure, masterpiece.
But you can touch the bottom in a deep swimming pool, right? So that's kind of where we are, I think. I mean, I watched you guys talking about the draft, and you guys are all, in some big circle jerk talking about intelligence of this offensive lineman. And which guy was born in what year and all this stuff. And that's fine. You're not too far removed from, well, I checked and his agent matches up with the agent of my current tight end number 2.
Yeah.
So that's the reason I took this guy in round 2 of the draft. In theory, every single stone in this game is worthy of some degree of turning.
Yeah, I agree. And obviously we're going to get on one of these videos we're going to get Julio on, or Shane, right? Julio Riddlesby. And we're going to get him on, and he is intelligence for him is a big deal.
Intelligence, right?
Yeah.
So that's a big angle. Yeah.
Big angle for him. And, he gets a lot of success from that. There's all these things, and, the trade-offs between them is an enormous part of what I think makes this game enduringly interesting, right? And, we've we've mentioned the name of a lot of people who play this game to an unbelievably high level. And basically, there's a tight community of people who think about the game, and it's good fun to be in it, right? That's pretty much. I mean, look, I've covered, I think, what I wanted to cover in this. And is there anything before we wrap up? Is there anything else you want to cover in this, or anything else that kind of springs to mind for you?
Well, I mean, this is fun for me. I've really enjoyed playing this game for a long time, and it does my heart good that there is a healthy community of people who are into the game this way. And even though I'm still on an unusual track in the way I pursue it. That's probably in my best interest for it to stay that way. I'm not sure I would reveal as much as I have about chemistry if I felt like this game had 5 more years in its current iteration. I mean,
Yeah,
who knows what's going to happen? And I
yeah, for
mean,
sure.
by
Yeah,
all accounts, it sounds like Mr. Gindin more or less has this game sitting in the can and is just waiting for someone to come along and shine its shoes and turn it into some sort of a different graphic interface, and it'll get out the door. In any event, I hope that happens. I hope it gives us all sort of a new shuffled deck to have to work through and new puzzles to solve, that sort of thing. I love the game. I think managing American football is the perfect groove. Managing 50 players who count is just about right.
yeah,
I mean, if you've played these kind of games with like a basketball team that goes 12 deep and 7 players count, and I get so bored with that. You can't. It doesn't have the layers that I want here. I love the idea of starting a season saying, I just don't have the right guy to play slot receiver, right guard, and fullback on my offense, and I
yeah,
really need to solve those problems. I love that.
yeah, yeah. Well, and again, if you want to. If you want to read about that, the thread that you've done, because that's pretty much the kind of way you attack it, right? It's like, look, okay, we're new season, I need to do X, Y, Z. Let's figure out how to do it.
Yep.
Yeah, look, I appreciate you taking the time to do this. That was fascinating for me. I look forward to whatever other innovations you come up with, which I will studiously copy. And hey, look, it's been a real privilege to do this. I'm gonna see if I can figure out how to turn the recording off. And thanks
Perfect.
a lot.
Well, I enjoyed it, Jamie. Thanks so much.
Yeah, cheers, man. Bye.